Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. It's good to be with you here on this Saturday, February 21st, for a second time following the launch of the Starlink 17-25 mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base early this morning. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Hope you've all had a wonderful and hopefully relaxing Saturday in between these two launches. If you're joining us after being up with us early this morning, you're a trooper, and we appreciate it. Welcome back. If this is your first launch broadcast with us today, welcome in. As you can see in the clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, we are just under an hour away from SpaceX launching the Falcon 9 rocket you see there at the heart of your screen. The mission is Starlink 6-104, the booster 1067 in the SpaceX fleet. This is the flight leader, making its 33rd trip to space and back. SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece, and B-1067 has been leading the charge in that endeavor. Currently, SpaceX has two other boosters that are also in the 30-plus launch club. Let's take a look at the Falcon 9 frequent flyers. You can see B-1071 and 1063 also among the most flown boosters for SpaceX. B-1069 knocking on the door of being in the 30-plus club as well. As we're getting rolling here tonight, I want to thank the more than 1,300 of you who are watching along with us live this evening. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream. It's a quick, easy, and free way to help support the channel and bring this live launch coverage to more people as we roll on through our countdown tonight. I want to thank our moderators in the chat who are helping us out this evening. Big thank you to Aussie Space Girl, Astro Joe, and Jeff Hansen. And if you see any of the other mods cruise on in throughout the course of the coverage, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. You can make the mods' job that much easier just by following our live chat rules. We ask that you please post your message in English so that the mods can respond as appropriate. Also, that you don't dive into topics of overt politics or religion, and please don't use all caps. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just ask that you don't create a large chunk of them so it takes up a big percentage of the live chat space. And last but not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. We'll all get along swimmingly. We're also joined this evening in the chat by one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, who's able to help answer folks' questions throughout the course of the coverage. Speaking of channel members, this and every other live launch opportunity is made possible in no small part thanks to our wonderful channel member community. So thanks to folks like M. Teresa, the aforementioned Cumulus Granatus, Lone Solopsist, Lloyd Green is with us tonight as well. M12407 and many, many others. RWL, hello, hello. Ken Urbanek, good to see you. General membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and the ability to watch all of our live launch lift-off moments from here in Florida in 4K. Upon departure from the pad here at Space Launch Complex 40, Falcon 9 is going to be flying on a southeasterly trajectory as it heads away from Florida's Space Coast. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of tonight's broadcast. We've also got our photographers out and about getting ready to track the Falcon 9, get some stellar imagery and tracking views as the rocket leaves the pad. If you're not following our photography team on X, you can find them at their handles here on your screen. Adam is at A Burn NYC, Michael at MD Kane Jr. John is off this evening, but if you're not following him, you ought to as well. He is at John Pisani Photo. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook for those of you who are not on X. For those of you following the Artemis program and the progress of Artemis 2 towards flying 4 astronauts around the moon and back, it has been a bit of a whirlwind these past 48 hours. Of course, coming off of the wet dress rehearsal tanking test, the second one, that concluded on Thursday the 19th, there was a briefing the morning of Friday the 20th with uh, lots of good updates and noting that they'd hit a lot of the milestones that they had laid out ahead of them going into the wet dress rehearsal. And things were feeling pretty good as NASA announced they were aiming for March 6th for the flight of the Artemis 2 mission. But then, unfortunately, overnight, helium issues were discovered connected to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, or the upper stage of the of the SLS rocket over at Launch Complex 39B. And unfortunately, according to the update from NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, in order to correct the issue and get to the root cause of what was causing the helium flow interruption, they are going to need to roll this rocket back into the vehicle assembly building. And by doing so, that removes the possibility of being able to launch this rocket within the March window, which means that now the earliest possible opportunity to launch for NASA becomes the April launch period, which opens on April 1st. There are a couple of days within the month of April, though, that present the opportunity for NASA to fly a daytime flight for the Artemis 2 crew. That would be on April 1st and April 30th. Of course, until this issue is able to be addressed inside the vehicle assembly building, the rocket rolled back out to the pad and potentially, this hasn't been announced or determined, but there might be another wet dress rehearsal needed once returning to the pad. Time will tell. But given that once the rocket rolls back out to the pad, the first time it was described as a roughly 18-ish day workflow of getting in the right configuration once arriving at the pad. Unclear if they'll still need a full 18-day span of time when they return to the pad next time. So lots up in the air as far as the timing for the Artemis 2 mission. Of course, we'll let you know any further updates as they become available. Administrator Isaacman noted that there will be a news briefing at some point this coming week to discuss the path forward. He says regarding both the upcoming preparations and work ahead towards the launch of Artemis 2, as well as, he says, future missions. So perhaps some discussion will be on tap of how to prevent issues like this for the Artemis 3 flight, which would be the first moon landing as currently architected. Anytime you want to head over and check out views of the SLS rocket, we'll have those over for you on our 24/7 live stream called, appropriately, Artemis Live. Those who were watching earlier today may have spotted, as we tweeted about, the removal of the platforms that were added Friday night. Those were put up in place to access the flight termination system batteries on the rocket. And that was, of course, back when NASA was planning for a launch opportunity no earlier than March 6th. But in order to be able to configure the rocket and the mobile launcher for a rollback, those platforms were removed today because there are high winds expected tomorrow, and that would not be conducive to trying to remove those platforms. So again, for those just joining us here in the live chat, the long and short of it is Artemis 2 is most assuredly not launching in the March window. TBD if April will in fact be in play. It'll depend on how quickly the rocket is able to get back into the barn, the timeline for the work, assessing the helium issue, when they're able to get back to the pad and get fit up in a configuration suitable for launch. In the meantime, speaking of suitable for launch, the Falcon 9 rocket here at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape is just under 46 minutes away from its flight. This will be SpaceX's 604th launch of a Falcon 9 rocket to date, and its 22nd flight of 2026. Just about 10 minutes from now is when SpaceX is expected to start tanking its Falcon 9 rocket. As we're awaiting that milestone, want to welcome in a couple of new channel members here. Apologies for possible mispronunciation here, but welcome to Elenir Paraguaso. Mark is me too, and Lane Curtis lives, all joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. I also want to thank pre-existing channel member Bill in Lauderdale for the $5 super chat. It says, cheers to the mods. Thank you. And Macaw SJ, another channel member, another $5 super chat, who says, yes, cheers to the mods, and Will, and Cumulus Granatus. And I will extend that cheers to the rest of the team here at Spaceflight Now. with Falcon 9 fueling just around the corner here as we just crossed T minus 43 minutes. Let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline that is out ahead of SpaceX. Things will get going with the launch director making the confirmation that they're ready to start prop load sequence. Once the go ahead is given, following a poll done electronically, tanking begins at T minus 35 minutes with the loading of liquid oxygen on board the rocket's booster and RP1, a rocket grade propellant, on board the first and second stages of the rocket. Half an hour before takeoff, the cryogenic helium loading on the first stage gets underway. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes after that. Helium, as is the case with the upper stage of the SLS rocket, similar here on the Falcon 9 in that it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP1 loading wraps up. Then at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down begins. This is when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. At about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, we'll see the so-called big vent, a good visual indication of this chill down process. That vent lasts about 4 minutes in duration and sets the stage for the LOX to flow beginning at T minus 16 minutes. About 7 minutes prior to takeoff is when the engine chill gets underway. SpaceX flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those 9 Merlin 1D engines at the base of the booster from thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strongback, otherwise known as the transporter erector. First, we will see the clamp arms open up just beneath the payload fairings. And then a little bit after T minus 4 minutes, we'll see the strong back start to recline away from the rocket. Here at pad 40, it'll pull back just a few degrees at first and then stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion, clearing the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9 rocket. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Same will be true on the second stage about a minute after that. At this point in the count, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds before departure, when we hear the call that the Falcon 9 has entered into its automated startup sequence, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will then give their go for launch confirmation at T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be granted at T minus 3 seconds, and the full 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected. The command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Tonight, that departure time is 10:47, as is the case right now. 10:47 and 10 seconds Eastern, 03:47 and 10 seconds UTC for our friends around the world. Just about 38.5 minutes from now. T minus 35 minutes and counting. Just conferring what we were hearing a little bit ago, that it sounds like the pre-fueling venting at the pad was quite audible tonight. A good indication that SpaceX is pressing forward and preparing to, well, not preparing anymore, is now loading fuel on board the Falcon 9 rocket, that RP-1, rocket grade kerosene. Liquid oxygen should now be flowing on board the rocket's booster as well. And that'll be our good visual indication that fueling is underway. Taking a closer look now at the Falcon 9 first stage. If you see the lettering SpaceX, just beneath the X is where we'll start to see a frost line form, as well as some vapor in that region of the rocket, with liquid oxygen flowing on board the booster. That looks, of course, considerably colder than the comparatively much warmer and more humid Florida air, which will allow us to see that vapor. And we are now pretty clearly seeing that vapor form at that region of the rocket I was just mentioning. Good visual indication that SpaceX is, in fact, fueling the Falcon 9 rocket. Therefore, locking into the T0 at 10:47 p.m. Eastern, 03:47 UTC for our friends around the globe. Just under 29 minutes on the clock now. If you're just joining us, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 6-104 mission, the flight of 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites into low Earth orbit. Appreciate the more than 2,000 of you who are watching along with us live tonight. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to make their way into this live launch coverage. Also, as we're now in the back half of the countdown, let us know where you're watching from tonight, whether you're here with us in Florida or a little bit further flung. It's always great to see where our global audience is representing. I want to thank our moderator, one of our moderators tonight, Jeff Hansen, for the $10 super chat. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff says, go Cape, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go Starlink. Godspeed, 1067. 1067 does still bear the little king icon on the top of the booster, indicating that it is crowned among the Falcon boosters as the most flown first stage, at least as of right now. 32 missions down, about to make its 33rd flight here in just about 26 and a half minutes. It will land on the booster called a shortfall of gravitas less than 8.5 minutes after liftoff. With this booster getting ready to make another record-breaking flight, let's go ahead and take a beat to talk about the flight history for this Falcon 9 first stage. B1067 is not quite the oldest booster that SpaceX has flying. That would be B1063, which we saw take off and land safely early this morning. But this booster began flying in early June of 2021, launching a cargo vehicle to the International Space Station. That was the CRS-22 flight. Followed up by another Dragon spacecraft, this time launching the 4 members of the Crew 3 mission to the International Space Station. That mission included the first 2 members of NASA's 2017 astronaut class, nicknamed the Turtles. It was Rajachari and Caleb Barron. Half of the crew launching on board Dragon Endurance in November of 2021. That was followed up by the launch of the Turksat 5B satellite in December of that year. And then Crew 4 took flight on April 27th of 2022 on board Dragon Freedom. Freedom is currently docked to the International Space Station after having launched with the 4 members of the Crew 12 flight earlier this month. Coming back to this booster, its next mission, another Dragon mission, this time of the cargo variety. CRS-25 launching on July 14th of 2022. This booster launched its first batch of Starlink satellites on September 19th of 2022. Starlink Group 4-34. Then a mission for Eutelsat Hopper 13G in November of that year. And then a mission for one of SpaceX's oldest customers, SES, with the flight of the first two O3B mPOWER satellites in December of 22. A trio of Starlink missions came after that. Then next up was the Satria mission for Indonesian company PSN on June 18th of 2023. Back to Starlink land we go for a handful more flights. And then this booster launched the Telkomsat Meraputa 2 mission for Indonesia back on February 20th of 2024. Back to Starlink land we go for another handful of missions before a launch for the European Commission with a flight of a couple of Galileo spacecraft, FM-26 and FM-32, launching on September 18th of 2024. That was followed up by the KoreaSat 6A mission, and then it's Starlinks from there on out to bring us into the present day, where in just about 22 and a half minutes, we'll see mission number 33. Time currently T-minus 22 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. And there you see the start of the big vent here. SpaceX thermally conditioning the feed lines at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. With less than 20 minutes remaining on the clock, want to also thank our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs for being with us here tonight to help track the Falcon 9 rocket once it makes its ascent from Space Launch Complex 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The big vent has wrapped up here at pad 40. Second stage lock load is just about to get underway in the next 10 seconds. Want to welcome in new channel member Lisa Ring, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Lisa. We're glad to have you with us. Also, thanks to Chuck for gifting 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Chuck. Thanks so much for helping to grow the community here on YouTube. And for those 20 new channel members, welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Charles Briggs, 8886, here on YouTube in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Also, thanks to channel member Glenn Ashworth, the $2 super chat. Time now, T-minus 14 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. The payload on board the Falcon 9 rocket launching today is a batch of, jumped the gun there, batch of 28 Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites heading into low Earth orbit. This will be SpaceX's 17th flight, supporting the Starlink constellation launching so far in 2026. With these satellites deployed, SpaceX will have launched a total of 458 Starlink satellites in this year alone. The V2 Mini optimized satellites are considerably lighter than their predecessor, Starlink V2 Minis. The old ones were a little more than 1,700 pounds, or roughly 800 kilograms in mass. The new ones, a little more than 1,200 pounds, or 575 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet, or 30 meters. They utilize argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. Taking a look at the manufacturing process there at SpaceX facilities in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. These particular satellites today will be deployed at about 168 miles or 271 kilometers in altitude at a roughly 43-degree inclination. Currently, SpaceX has more than 9,700 Starlink satellites in low Earth orbit. Time now T-minus 11 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. For those of you not with us during the earlier part of the broadcast, this will be SpaceX's 604th Falcon 9 rocket launch to date and the 22nd of the year so far. So let's go ahead and take a beat to talk about SpaceX's workhorse vehicle, the Falcon 9, which stands at 70 meters or 229 feet in height and has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that comes from the booster, bottom two-thirds of the rocket. Today's first stage, of course, as we've been mentioning throughout the broadcast, is B-1067, the flight leader for SpaceX. At the base of this and every other first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Today on tap, SpaceX has a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the rocket's inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the rocket's second stage, and at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers will ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until the point of stage separation. Speaking of the rocket's upper stage, the second stage of the Falcon 9 is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It is equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It can produce more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. As with the first stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket burns the same propellant mix, RP1 and LOX. Following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, there will be one final burn, a deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it's designed to burn up and eliminate the risk of creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, which are currently encapsulating the 28 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height, and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The fairing halves will splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean a little bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship. Taking a quick peek at our live chat here. Want to thank channel member Stephen Frazier for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Stephen. And to our newest gifted member, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Stephen in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Coming up on T-minus 7 minutes in the count, the point at which SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen to protect the engines from thermal shock and damage during startup. About a minute from now, the first stage kerosene tank will also be full. Before we get to the point of getting pad level views and mission audio from SpaceX, let's go ahead and talk briefly about where this rocket will be flying once it leaves the pad. Talking a little trajectory here. Falcon 9 rocket launching from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, as seen in this Google Earth overview. Falcon 9 rocket tonight will be flying on a southeasterly trajectory, heading away from the pad. Less than 3 minutes after liftoff, the first stage booster, 1067, will separate and then target a touchdown on the drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas, a little under 8.5 minutes after liftoff. A successful recovery with this drone ship would be the 143rd good landing for this vessel and the 575th booster landing for SpaceX to date. As mentioned, SpaceX also wants to recover the payload fairings. Once down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, they'll be brought aboard a recovery vessel like the one on your screen, brought through Cape Canaveral, as will the booster, and onto the Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center, where the booster and the fairing halves will be refurbished and turned around for a future mission. On the cusp of getting those views from SpaceX, I want to thank channel member Don Pierce for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Don, for your support tonight.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for the start of strongback retract.
And you're hearing that audio coming from SpaceX and good visuals of the Falcon 9 rocket there at Space Launch Complex 40.
Strongback retract has started.
Good confirmation there of the start of the strongback retraction. Momentarily, we'll see the clamp arms beneath the payload fairings open up, and then the strongback will start to recline from the Falcon 9 rocket a little bit past T-minus 4 minutes.
Stage 1
T-minus
box load is complete.
3 minutes and counting, and a good confirmation of stage 1 LOX load being wrapped up. We should hear a similar call regarding the upper stage liquid oxygen load process at around T-minus 2 minutes. As a reminder for our viewers tonight to not change that dial after booster landing is complete. We'll have a roundup of all of our various launch views after booster recovery happens. So if you want to see all those various camera angles that we're able to show you just quick glimpses of, we'll give you the much more robust roundabout after booster recovery. So be sure to stick around for that. 2 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The venting you're seeing here are the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts has started.
This is SpaceX clearing the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad. Coming up to the final minute and count.
Falcon 9 has entered startup.
We are now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to confirm that they are in fact go for launch.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that good call, we are coming up on the final 30 seconds before the departure of this Falcon 9 rocket. "15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on Starlink 6-104. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. SpaceX flight leader taking to the skies once more. Falcon 9 rocket passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
MVAC chill has started.
Good confirmation for MVAC chill, the thermal conditioning of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's upper stage. Coming to a few events next in fairly rapid succession. See first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. The payload fairings will also jettison right about at the 3-minute mark in flight. Roughly 10 seconds to MECO now. There you have MECO. Stage separation.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
Good calls, good visuals from the SpaceX onboard cameras. Fairing separation is coming up next. And there go the
Fairing
fairings.
separation confirmed.
Those payload fairings will splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, just a bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship. We're approaching 3.5 minutes into this flight so far. Everything appears to be going smoothly and nominally for SpaceX. Coming up on T plus 4 minutes into this mission, the next big milestone is a little more than 2 minutes away from now. That will be the 3-engine entry burn, helping to slow the booster down quite dramatically. The 1067 looks like it will be topping out at just about 114 kilometers in altitude. Now starting to make its descent towards the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. A good booster recovery tonight, in addition to being the 143rd landing on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. This would also be SpaceX's 472nd drone ship landing. Entry burn now less than a minute away.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
And great tracking work to catch the entry burn there. Well done, team. This burn lasting less than 30 seconds in duration.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Upper stage flight termination system has been safed. That was the call you just heard. And a good conclusion to the entry burn. Now a little more than 7 minutes into flight so far. Coming up next will be the single engine landing burn, set to take B-1067 on down to the drone ship for its record-breaking 33rd landing. Touchdown is expected in just a little more than 30 seconds from now.
Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And for a record 33rd time, a pinpoint landing by B-1067.
In-back shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with a good confirmation of, as expected, orbit insertion, the upper stage, the Falcon 9, will now coast until T plus 53 minutes, 52 seconds. There will be a brief 2-second burn to circularize the orbit. And then the Starlink satellites are set to deploy at T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, 59 seconds post liftoff. And as a reminder, we are working on the launch replays here next, a roundup of all the various camera views that we captured this mission from here at the press site and elsewhere around Brevard County. So stick around for that. Those will be ready for you here in the next few minutes. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and pivot to our mission stats as they currently stand. With a good liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster, 1067. That marked the record-breaking 33rd flight of that Falcon first stage. This was SpaceX's 604th Falcon 9 rocket launch to date, the 22nd of the year so far. This was SpaceX's 538th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 165th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 309th from Space Launch Complex 40, and the 364th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's a look at the bar chart version of the Falcon family of rockets. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 143rd good landing of a booster on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. That marked SpaceX's 472nd drone ship landing and the 575th booster landing for SpaceX to date. Also, the 576th landing of an orbital class rocket, including Blue Origin's booster Never Tell Me the Odds. Speaking of which, just about 24 hours ago, right about 12:30-ish last night, the payload fairings for the next New Glenn flight with the encapsulated Bluebird 7 spacecraft made their way out to Blue Origin's launch complex, LC-36, at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station for a launch in the near future. Firm launch date hasn't been announced yet. Blue Origin said that they were targeting the end of February. Just a handful of days remaining before that point in time, so might be closer to early March when that rocket takes flight, but we'll, of course, have live coverage when that is ready to depart the Space Coast. Coming back to our stats here, looking out around the world, this was the 12th orbital launch from Florida, the 23rd rocket launching from U.S. soil, the 25th from a U.S. rocket company, and this was the 39th orbital launch attempt around the world. There have been 3 orbital mishaps so far this year. There's a look at the Cape bar chart. Here's where our pie chart now currently stands. And it looks like we've got those replays ready for you now, so let's go ahead and get things started with a press site fixed view from Adam Bernstein. Onto the press site wide camera next. Onto the turn-based view now. On to B. Carson's with XQ Productions next. On to Pete's Health Tracker next. On to Chuck and Chen's Merritt Island Tracker. And wrapping things up with Adam's press site tracker. And that'll go ahead and do it for our live coverage of the Starlink 6-104 mission from SpaceX. I want to thank Bill in Lauderdale, one of our channel members, for the $10 super chat, closing us out here. Saying thank you to the mods and Spaceflight Now for bringing this to us. Thank you, Bill, for your support of our coverage tonight. Want to once again thank our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images for their assistance helping with the tracking tonight. Thanks as well to our channel member Cumulus Granatus for answering folks' questions in the chat, to moderators Aussie Space Girl, Rusty Shackelford, Astro Joe, and Jeff Hansen for holding it down in the live chat as well. Big thanks to our photographers Michael Kane and Adam Bernstein for some ace work tonight, and to our Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young for running the technical operations of the broadcast superbly as usual. Most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from, and special brownie points if you were able to join us this morning for the Starlink 17-25 mission in addition to this launch here tonight. As a reminder, you can always head on over to Artemis Live to check out the progress happening with the Space Launch System rocket, especially with the news that at some point in the coming days, the rocket will be rolling back to the vehicle assembly building. We'll, of course, be keeping very close tabs on that progress and let you know when to expect that rollback to occur. We'll also put the briefing from uh, most likely the administrator as well as other NASA leaders into Artemis Live when they're ready to talk about the helium issue, which, per Administrator Isaacman's comments earlier today, should be coming at some point this week. On the launch front, we've got a couple of missions out ahead of us on, let's see, Tuesday, I believe, where things stand. Tuesday, the 24th. Flights from Florida and California once again. Thankfully, not quite as early from California on Tuesday. We've got another double launch day on tap as things currently stand. We'll be ready to bring that to you when those launches are ready to fly. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourselves, be good to others. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.